Gregor. I'm the director of the ICA, and I'm very, very happy to be welcoming today Rose Wylie and Clarrie Wallis. I just wanted to say a few words, which is just phones off would be great, just as I did just then. And just a reminder that, you know, we hold culture nows as in a way that we hope that they're fairly relaxed and formal. It's not any great pressure for anyone. Feel free to ask questions, obviously, towards the end, if that's okay. And the other thing is, you're in the ICA studio, which, just so you know, it's a place where it's got quite a rich history in terms of the fact it was once squatted. It was the home of the anarchist press. It was at that time, I believe, that certain individuals decided here to attack the finance department, which resulted in Norman Rosenthal being beaten up, and his blood is still preserved behind a sheet of perspex over in our mezzanine, over in the mezzanine, which is where our finance department is presently today. So it's got an extraordinary atmosphere to it, this room, in my view. It's where Basquiat made his entire exhibition, which at the ICA. He refused to kind of get a studio or anything. He just ended up painting, with making stretches and painting around the corner. In fact, I'm absolutely convinced there's a sort of palette of colours tested on the wall out here, which I'm almost certain is his. But anyhow, it's always important and wonderful and great to have an artist come and speak at the ICA, and it's essential to me as director that we get to meet all the artists of the day, coming from wherever, and I'm so excited to welcome Rose. I've got an introduction which I'm deviating from massively, but I was so struck by your recent Tate Britain display, and was immediately on the phone to Antonia, who does our talk, saying, please, can we get Rose Wylie to come down and talk about her work. Apologies if it's a bit late on the ICA's part to be doing that, but it's great that you're here today. And we'll hear more from you. And Clarrie is an old friend and colleague. We've worked on exhibitions before. Clarrie is a Tate curator who has recently worked on Patrick Caulfield and Rose Wylie, and has also worked on the exhibition Barry Flanagan Early Works, Richard Long, and Mark Wallinger's Tate Britain. We worked on a show together many moons ago with Angus First, Damien Hirst and Sarah Lucas, called Inagada Davida. And you will be, it says here, in the autumn, co-curating an upcoming painting show called Painting Now, 5 Contemporary Artists. And so, Clarrie, really welcome. Thanks for coming up and doing this today. And I shall now shut up and leave the two of you to talk. But thank you very much, Clarrie and Rose. Thank you.
Both of us talk fairly softly, so if you can't hear, by all means, either bring your seat forward or shout and just say, can you speak up? And likewise, whilst we're going to leave questions towards the end, if anybody feels that something isn't clear, you know, do interrupt and just say, you know, this is very informal, and just relax. What I thought we'd structure this is that I'm going to really focus a lot on the work that's currently on display at Tate Britain till the autumn. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, by all means, hopefully, you know, you'll be able to come down and have a look. And then Rose, very brilliantly, has actually brought along, I think, 12 slides of recent work that I haven't really seen, so it's totally hot off the press.
One does cross over.
Okay.
Because you've got
the slide of it, but I haven't seen that.
But it's a stacked work, and I've divided it. So Clarrie's got complete work, okay, and I've got that, but that's the only shared one.
So I thought what we would then do is just to ask Rose just to talk us through these ones, and then we'll allow a little bit of time for questions at the end. So starting off with, for those of you that aren't familiar with Rose's work, she makes these large-scale paintings which are influenced or informed by visual culture. And her subject matter ranges from sort of contemporary Egyptian Hajj wall paintings and Persian miniatures to films, news stories, celebrity gossip, and observations of daily life. I've just started off just as a sort of a backdrop. We've just got a general installation of the room that we worked on together. And really, my first question, which is a rather large question, was really wanting to just start by asking you about the process of making a painting in terms of influences and ideas. Is it that you're always on the lookout and just sort of keeping clippings of things that seem interesting, or if you're inspired by visual culture, how does that actually work for you? Huge question.
Yeah, well, I could start with that. I see a lot of newspapers because I put them out on the floor of my studio. I don't have a big studio, and it's in my house, and I tend to keep paint and evidence of paint in my studio rather than having it walked all over the house. So I put newspaper down on the floor as a covering, so I keep putting more newspaper, and it gets thicker and thicker, and I keep seeing these images, and I can pick them up and use them, because I think external chance imagery is always a good thing. Rather than choosing it myself, that's one way of it filtering into my experience. And there's another way where I actually open the newspaper downstairs on Sunday. I tend to only look at the newspaper on Sundays. I open the paper and I see pictures, and that's more self-chosen other than the thrown at me off the floor, which is why also I like television images, and I like film images, because they come at me. Television is chance, and films I have chosen. But all of this stimulus, I think, is part of how things come through to me. What was the other bit of your question? You said, do I pick newspapers?
No, it was just really wondering about, it seems to me that the way that you're working, often it's very kind of associative. So you'll see something and it's spontaneous, and it triggers something in you that you find find interesting.
You're quite right. I can see somebody walking down the street, or sitting somewhere against something, or it can be a film which just triggers an image. In fact, watching films can become to be quite in a sense, torture, because you know you might have to work at something. As soon as you've decided, you have to remember. I work from memory. I don't go back to a still from a film. So you start to put it down, and as you put it down, it vanishes. So you try again. But anyway, you make a painting from that, and then as you try to remember it, you realise how in fact you can't remember it. So although you go around saying this is just a marvellous image by this bloke, I know, Carlos Regadas or somebody, this is marvellous, this is wonderful, it's made such an impact. When you come to try to reproduce it, you find that the impact recedes, and the impact that you so vaingloriously talked about actually seems to have diminished as you do it. So it's interesting that something sticks, and then you get to work on it, and then I draw, and I paint from the drawing. I do a lot of drawings, discard.
Because there's something very particular. I mean, we'll talk about the film paintings in a minute, because I think it's interesting, because there are these different sort of subjects, and there's lots for me to kind of to ask you about with that. But there is something about also your working process and about the drawings. I mean, you're a very careful and meticulous worker, and often that there's a lot of drawing that goes in. Or drawing is the root of your practice in many ways, and then the paintings emerge from that process.
Yes. Very often, yes.
And there's a sense of you also, we'll flick through and then we'll come back, you can see it in here. So this is just other views of the room.
That's good.
This is a good one for us to look at.
It shows the working.
Did you want to tell us a little bit about this? This is a slide of Eve sitting on a mountain.
Apart from newspapers and films, I'm also very connected to books on medieval drawing and alchemy, drawings of, I don't know what century is quite. I'm not all that good at dates or places, but it's the pictures. And there are some, I suppose they're probably 15th century books that I've got reproductions of, put out for children, I think, to learn. And they're the most marvellous images of this kind of general subject of alchemy. And then there's medieval prints and stuff. And this one is exactly that. I don't know quite the date, but it's probably about 15th century or earlier. And it was a picture of Eve sitting on a mountain, and
I love it.
I did take to it. So then comes the business of drawing, a lot of drawing. And this it's A1. It's size, so that's 33 inches by 23. You can convert that. I can't. And I just start usually from a smaller drawing, and the painting can go anywhere, and it gets wild, and the paper gets thicker and thicker because I keep overdrawing, and instead of, I don't rub out. Well, I could rub out. I've nothing against rubbing out, but I tend to add, particularly.
So it's a sort of collage technique.
Yes, I keep
in terms
adding, because this is here biro. I like biro. I think probably because traditionally, or earlier on in my sort of teaching or my painting life, biros were not used much. I think people used 6B pencils, Conte crayon, charcoal, but somehow, I'm talking about a long time ago, in the 50s and 60s, biros weren't used, and so I like, for exactly that reason, I do like using biro, and I don't like using chalk, and I don't like greasy chalks. Yes, the drawing, I think you said they're careful. In a sense they're careful, but they're also, they are completely released.
What I
but
meant,
they've got to be released in the right way, so I keep on doing it. I do them and do them and do them. So
that's more what I meant. That behind the painting, that there was this,
you're right.
that there is this background process, and that your work is rooted in this, in drawing, and
it is
this collage, and how when you're looking at, I'll just flick back, but with the paintings, you can see that there is a sort of sense of Rose working with multiple panels and using that.
Can you flick back a moment, Clarrie? I'd like to stick on. I think the thing is, I haven't seen this picture for some time. So
which one do you want? The Eve one?
Eve, yes. I think if something you haven't seen for some time, you can get more
quite
excited by.
Yeah.
Yes, and I wanted to say that the bottom half worked okay, but the top half did not. And after a time, and the paper was getting more and more stuck, I used a lot of glue and a lot of paper and a lot of sticking on, superimposition, collaging on. I cut the whole thing in half, and this was very satisfactory, just cutting through this. And one of the reasons was that it was bulging badly. Bulges can be good, I think, and bubbles can be good, but certain bulges are not good. And I decided that you see, straight through it with a Stanley cutter, and it's often quite thick, so you have to hack a bit, which is always satisfactory. And then you reassemble, and it can go wrong again. That little bit is lined paper, so that's quite a different. You probably can't see it, but it's a lined, cheap exercise book paper, because I like cheap paper, but the major part of the paper is perfectly good paper, but it's not special paper. If you have very special paper, you don't want to keep throwing it away, you don't want to cut it and throw it, bin it, cut it and add it. It's too expensive, whatever it is. So this way you just keep going, and I don't. You see, there'll be a thickness because it's sticking off the wall. The shadow, I think, at the bottom will tell you that it's thick, and the edges uneven.
And that process, though, still works when you're actually
painting
the paintings,
yes.
and that you're always working on you're working on the floor.
I have worked on the floor for a long time. I worked on the floor. Yes.
And why is that?
Why do I work on the floor?
Yeah.
Why did I?
Yeah.
I think it's referring back. Also, I think there was a time when you didn't work on the floor. I don't know whether you all... it's completely... No one would raise an eyebrow about working on the floor now, but somehow the way things were, painters painted on canvas, and they often painted, you're nodding, they often painted on a stretched canvas. They often had the canvas propped against the wall or on an easel. So I somehow felt
Was it a looser
I
way of
felt-
working as well? Did it feel
It's
more
looser,
relaxed?
it's much more flexible.
Yeah.
It's flat, you can add a lump, in the same way as you can add a lump of paper, you can add a lump of cut canvas, you just put it up, butt it up against it and carry on. If you want to put a bit on the wall, you staple it up. It's all together, I think paper and collage and working, as Clarrie said, with the same, carrying on the same method from the collage paperwork to the painting, does make for flexibility. It is, you can change, you can add to the side, you can add to the bottom or the top. You can cut a piece on, and if it's an unsatisfactory piece of painting, you can collage another piece of canvas on it. I mean, that's fine, we all do that, but it is flexibility, which I like.
Going back to this idea about, well, the process of working and about how it's very much about working from, you're working from memory, aren't you?
I do a lot, but not always.
But sometimes you're doing it. But I know that you've talked to me before about this idea of wanting to prioritise looking over reading or sensing over knowledge. And that seems to be quite important to you in terms of the way that you synthesise ideas. So, for example, perhaps we should go and look at some of the film paintings, and these are paintings which have been inspired from Rose watching, various films. But you never go back and look at you will never go back and look at it again to check whether the information is it's your impression of something.
Yes.
It's the filtering process.
Yes, goes through memory back to, and so it can be inaccurate. What you remember is the thing that arrested arrested me in the first place. So you can remember that, which it may not actually be accurate to the subject, but it is accurate to your memory of it. So it's a slightly different thing. So you think this is just terrific. I mean, certainly I think films are marvellous. I'm a very strong fan of film.
I put together a few, and starting off with, I wondered if you would like to say something just about, this painting, which is, it's sort of part of a set of this this series of the film paintings, sort of Inglorious, sort of based on Inglorious Bastards.
Yes, I do think Tarantino is very theatrical. He's terrific. I like his films very much, and I like the idea of taking one film, one kind of form, art form, and then translating it into another. So you get the moving art form of film translated into the static one of painting. And I think the uniforms, the Nazi uniforms, are very, very powerful. And so I used, apart from the film, in this sense, in a way, I did have a book. I didn't refer back to the film, but I had a book on Nazi memorabilia, and I checked and I used the details of the coat and the cloak and the bubble trousers, which I always find very dramatic. So it's accurate to the uniform, but there was no cloak like that in the film. There wasn't that image in the film. So this is pushing my own imagery into Tarantino's. But this one is close to this bloke here, Colonel Hans Lander. And as it's
but
right,
the flames come from a different source.
yeah,
don't
the
they?
flames come from Giovanni de Paolo, who I do, apart from, I think you're probably going to ask me who I like or who influenced me, or
Yeah.
I literally,
Tell everybody now that it's good. Yeah, it's
I
good
could
to
slip
talk about.
one into another.
Go on, slip it in. Just
I do like the early Renaissance. I like to look at the late Renaissance because I can pick things from it, but I do like the look of the early Renaissance, and I like the look of ancient painting and ancient wall painting and mosaic floors in Syracuse and I don't know, anywhere, Mesopotamia. So I do like the early Renaissance, and Giovanni de Paolo is a big favourite of mine. I think he's terrific, and I think I could have. I wondered why the Royal Academy put on the Botticelli illustrations of Dante's Inferno quite a long time ago, and there was no reference in, well, that I saw in the newspapers or anything about Giovanni di Paolo's illustrations to the Inferno. I like them both, but I particularly like Giovanni di Paolo. And thinking about flames from the film, because there's a big burn up at the end. Has anyone seen Inglourious Bastards? I imagine it was a very popular film, very well seen, quite slightly controversial. And there was a big burn up at the end, and I thought that I would use, well, I wasn't quite sure what to look at for my flame model, and I flipped through my book. I thought Giovanni di Paolo, probably torture, hell, Dante, yeah, probably a few flames in there, and he has got flames. I mean, I've got an open fire at home, but these little orange specks I swiped from Giovanni di Paolo, because flames do that, but I never actually noticed it when I looked at my own fireplace. So certainly that and the modelling. I like the modelling on the flames and the flatness of the paint down here, which is more like somebody else, early Cézanne on the styles are quite different across the painting. The stars are to do with the stars that were sewn onto the Jewish, appliqued onto the arm. And I can't think of anything. Oh, the horns on the right-hand side here is actually, because I didn't fill the hat in with colour, I left, it's a hat, not horns, but it takes over for kind of satanic, slightly satanic quality on that side. Anyway,
so these paintings really, I mean, it seems well actually underpinning a lot of your practice is this idea of sort of sense of homage and respect.
yes.
In terms of you actually, with the film paintings, and I think we've got a couple more here. There's this one which is Japon Driving, which is a kind of your response to an opening scene
Yes.
of the film.
Yes.
And then also we've got kind of, I love this one, this is
Tarantino.
Tarantino, you're a big fan of Kill Bill. And then, if we go on a bit further, we've also got, there are these paintings which have dealt with, I mean, this is actually based on kind of, it's a sort of a homage or a response to kind of Penelope Cruz and her sort of, I think you talked
Yes.
about her kind of wolf whistle attributes,
Yes.
which is a very nice way of putting
Yes,
it.
it's not a portrait of Penelope Cruz. I in fact find her a bit brittle as a star. But I know that the public, I think, find her terrific. So I use her as an icon of sort of stereotypical beauty. And I thought, well, what is it about her? She's got a big hairstyle. And I broke down the list of what Clarrie said her attributes, her wolf whistle attributes. So with pencil on a piece of paper I wrote big hairstyle, eyelashes, big chest, often tight top, small waist, skirt, all these things very kind of appropriate, long legs. And in the film I think she must have worn flat shoes. She may not have, that may be my idea. She may have worn high heels, I think she probably usually does. But she could have worn flat shoes. And yeah, because there were some pictures, drawings I did of her, and I did her in trainers. I did my trainers on her feet. I'm not sure she wears that style. She may not. Anyway, I made this list, and then I did the drawings of her from the list. So the list came from Penelope Cruz, but the drawing came from the list, and the painting came from the drawing which came from the list. So it is very much to do with Penelope Cruz in my
But
mind.
it's not actually her.
But it isn't actually a realistic picture.
It's interesting because I think the next slide, if I've got the PowerPoint right, yes, fantastic, is this celebrity, the kind of ballerina, once again, where you've got, this sort of, tiny waisted
Wolf whistle here.
wolf whistle
Well, she's got,
ballerina.
I don't know, again, if you can see, but I think it's Posh Spice. And
I didn't know that. It says chocolate cake on the bottom as well. I don't know if you can read this.
celebrity. It was about not eating. The series was about not getting fat either by giving children proper food. I think the government decided that they would give children fresh vegetables or something. You may all know about it, that cook. What's his name? What is the cook's name?
Jamie Oliver.
Jamie Oliver, thank you. Did stuff for school meals, and there was England was the fattest country in Europe, so Tony Blair said. So I made paintings to do with skinny people who were obviously exercising and weren't fat at all, or food. And this.
So that's
So
so
this
the
is a
biscuit
skinny
painting
person.
is also then.
The biscuit painting, don't go yet. The biscuit
I won't.
painting is
Can't remember
food.
it, isn't it?
They're all linked. And this is someone who actually didn't appear to eat a lot of food. And it was at a time she had a very small chest. And I was going to say, if you can see, I sort of took her chest out of her frock at the top. And it probably isn't very visible, but I had a great deal of
Oh yes.
fun, sort of. Can you see?
Yes, I can.
She
Can you
just
see?
gouged out.
Just up, yeah.
Yeah. Quite formed, but very small. I don't know whether she she had problems. Did she change her chest? She may have. I'm not sure.
Posh Spice.
I don't know what she did.
I think she's.
She got bigger or smaller. I don't know.
By all
what
accounts, I think she's changed her chest on a number of occasions.
number of
I wouldn't want to be quoted on that.
So,
I'm not the voice of authority.
We
But,
have a chest changer here, but she's very small here, but quite special. And I don't know. It's a picture from the newspaper, one of the off the floor, and people have recognised it as a BAFTA Awards picture where she wore this little kind of bouffant skirt and top, and the photographer had taken her from low down, so her legs were very long. Anyway, so her legs are 2.5 meters. I can remember painting the white paint is paint out. Every time they go wrong, you paint them out, and so there's a lot of white paint, and then you get it. But it's it's like your person downstairs your person downstairs who did it straight on the wall. It's sort of straight up the canvas, quite big, but not as big as the one downstairs, not as big as that image. But it's still quite daunting to keep going with a leg for over 6 foot. Anyway, right.
And quite often with the paintings, I wanted to ask you, sometimes you'll use text, won't you, to reinforce points or ideas or things
Yes,
like with
flip
this.
back to the Tarantino, could you? Sorry. Where is it?
So this is the chocolate biscuit. And then back here.
The text is in fact a mnemonic, because I see a tremendous lot of films, and they can begin to merge, and if you want to talk about it, it's quite helpful if you can remember the title. So I wrote titles in and names of actors, and some of it, Brad Pitt is here, and names of the parts that they played in the film, and I can spell it wrong because if you're working from, that's one panel, if you're working from the middle backwards, you can get very involved in how you're forming the letters and what you're writing and how thick the black is and how much it isn't trickling if you don't want it to trickle or not, or thick or thin, and you can get the spelling wrong. It's not because you can't spell, but because the process of writing the name, the spelling just gets lost. So that accounts for that. I could change it here. I did change it here. I spelled Tarantino with an E. And I decided he might be unhappy with that, so I painted out the E and put an A in its place. But it's a mnemonic, it's to try to remember, to help me remember titles. Also, I like lettering, and I like doing it. And in a sense, it's easier to write some letters than it is to do a face. So it's a cop-out, but it's unifying.
No, I think it works very well in them.
But I like it.
If I flick through, and then maybe what we should do is have a look at Queen of Sheba, and maybe the Tate work, Pin Up and Pawn Queen, and then gives us a little bit of time for you to just to flick through and talk about the recent works. So this is a reference to Mark Wallinger.
Yes, whose horse is at the top of the now, isn't it?
It's, you know, the Mark Wallinger film Bear Sleeper, which is a bear. And then just cracking on here. Do you just want to talk a little bit about the painting on the left, because the idea or the interest in the kind of the story of the Queen of Sheba and the sense of you also being interested in mythology is something that also is present within some of your paintings.
I think in this one, the Queen of Sheba was a picture. It's a Persian miniature, and I haven't seen the actual picture, but Marina Warner reproduced it in one of her books. And
can you see? She's just here, but we've got a not a terrible. No. So this is one side of the painting with monkeys and camel.
These are her props. This is the Queen of Sheba. This is, in a sense, tells you where she came from. Has Ethiopia.
And this is the visit to King Solomon. And for those of you that know
thank you.
The story about it, where she goes to visit, she gets a request from Solomon to go and visit her, and she takes with her kind of her gold and her ivory and her sapphires.
Solomon's heard that she's very wise, she's very rich, she's very beautiful. And
so this is her,
decides because she is so rich and so beautiful and so wise that he will invite her over, and he does do that. No, he sends out his scouts. This is the story behind the story. He sends out his scouts, who are called jinns, kind of magic people who change their shape, and they check her out, and they come back and they tell Solomon that she is very beautiful, more beautiful than he would have thought. She is very rich, and everything is true that he'd heard, except that she had cloven feet. And
was it hairy legs as well?
Hairy legs. Hairy legs.
Killer combination.
So Solomon was very happy with the first three things, but he wasn't too keen on. Well, he thought it was a bit of a challenge with the hairy feet, hairy legs, and cloven feet. Kind of bestiality here. So anyway, the scouts. So they had a little test, and they removed a bridge from a small stream. So when she came to see him, she had to lift her skirts, and then her ankles and her feet, she had to take her shoes off, were revealed. So here we have the cloven foot, and here is her little Arthurian foot, because in fact she didn't have cloven feet, she had normal feet, didn't have hairy legs, and no cloven feet. So he was very happy about that. So Solomon there is John Terry. He's turned into John Terry. And he's black because he came from a large ink drawing, and the ink drawing was in black ink. So it wasn't because of a racist problem he was having at the time in the newspapers. It was because the ink was black, and so the painting is black.
And there are quite a few paintings and drawings you've done that have featured footballers anyway,
yes,
haven't they? It's a sort of, it's
yes, because we see them all the time,
yeah.
And they are idols, and they are kind of gods. People, they're shared subject matter.
I'm mindful of time, so what I think we'll do is maybe we should just carry on and just then get to a point where you can then talk about the recent work, because I'm curious to see what you've bought. So this is one which is hot off the press. Would you just like to tell us a little bit about it?
It is a recent work. I was asked if I would consider doing a bigger painting.
I'm going to give you this and then you can then click and show.
The height, okay. I often do 12 feet high, but so in panels, 1, 2, and then 2 more on the top, and then so I thought, well, okay, I'll do 3 layers, and this is the first painting I've made in 3 layers, and each of them is 2 meters plus. Each of them is 6 foot, so it's nearly 18 foot. The top one is a little bit shorter.
And the character and the 2 figures is Elizabeth?
The 2 figures are Charles I's brother, Henry, who died young, and Charles I became king. And this is Charles I's sister, Elizabeth, and they've recently been, a painting of them has recently been on show in the National Portrait Gallery by the English royal portrait painter Robert Peake. And Laura come in and put a reproduction of one of the pictures in the Observer, and it was a big painting, and it was very startling and quite marvellous, I thought. So I made a series of drawings and paintings of Henry Stuart. Here's that one.
And the fortress
And
in the background.
The castle at the top is Rochester Castle, which I added. It's nothing to do with historical fact of where these 2 stayed. They did stay in castles, but I don't think they stayed in Rochester Castle. But I travelled in a train past Rochester Castle, so I thought I would use the simplicity of it. From a distance, it's
great. Formally it works really.
Yes, it comes into a very simple, strong shape.
Yeah.
So that's about 10 foot high, the castle, and birds, which goes above these 2. And I brought this bird down to tie the whole thing together. So I think that's I got very excited by the size of it, because I wasn't quite sure how it would go together. I had a drawing of it. I made a drawing of it and did the first piece. The bottom section I did first.
Mm. So this stacking is a new way of stacking, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I stacked 3 layers, which is something I'm quite interested in. I've recently seen a stacked picture in Syracuse from the during the time, AD something or other. Marvellous frieze of girls, one level and then straight on top of it.
Because that was one of the things that I liked about when we were doing the Tate room together, about how you have these paintings which actually go around a corner, and they do have that kind of reference to friezes and
yes,
more medieval tapestries, I think.
Yes. Yeah, that's brilliant. I'll find you the castle by itself. That's the castle by itself. And I have a show in Cologne next April, and the ceiling height doesn't take the whole picture. That one doesn't take that, but it does take that. So that's quite. I talked about flexibility, and my dealer said, he's German. He said, Rose, if you do the whole thing, it won't fit. So do you think you could lop a bit off the top? I said, well, okay. I made the smaller. This section, that one, is a bit shorter than that one, because I was being obliging. Because I thought, well, it's a very nice gallery, Cologne. Cologne's a good spot at the moment, I've been told.
Yeah.
It's easy to get there on the Eurostar, and I've been told it's red hot, Cologne. Anyway, so I did. Anyway, so the second, this bottom bit, and it may come up by itself. In fact, I will show beside it. But there's a possibility where I could show the whole thing, which is
So he has a
coming
scroll in his hand. Is that a scroll?
glove.
A glove. Oh.
Yes, he's got a.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a nice idea. The portrait painter, when he did when he did Henry, he put him with a curtain. He did him in an interior shot, curtain, glove, sword, you know, bloke type gear. And then he put the girl out in the garden with trees, grass, etc. So what I've done, this is medieval grass. I use it quite a lot. It's like writing. It gives
Yes.
punctuation. It gives unity. And it's easy to do. So you can slap it on, and it's quite nice to do. So she's got the grass and the trees, and then, as luck had it, she's got a bird as well, because it slipped down from the stacking. The stacking above allowed the bird in. And one of my dealers said, I'm not sure about the bird. And the other bigger dealer said, yeah, well, it needs it. So that kind of clinched it. So here we are, the bird stays. And that is not writing. It's not. It's the zoom of the bird. Well, which way am I going? Oh, let me go back to my.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going completely haywire.
I go this way.
I
That
want
one.
to go backwards.
You want to go forwards?
I wanted to. Let's have a look. No.
We're going to your ones, then, sir.
Oh, we're going right through. Okay, sorry. I've lost it. It's only coming up in a minute. Yes, the zoom of the birds.
Okay, so you've got it again.
I
yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I do like cartoon language, and I think cartoon language is not only cartoon language, but it does go back to ancient and old. So if people say to me, oh, you know, cartoon, I'd say, well, yeah, it is cartoon, but it also goes back a long way. It's ancient and it's cartoon. So the motion lines are something I enjoy doing. Okay. That was an old one I put in for just for contrast. That one, it's an older one. This one is a watercolour, and there are a lot of, as Eve in a mountain, there are a lot of joins. You can see all the joins cut into the paper, and the uneven edges. Sometimes they're much more uneven than this. And it's about, well, it's not huge. It's about 3 foot up and 5 foot across. It's quite big. It's sort of the size of a large dining room table. Does that help? I'm sort of imagining your plates placed around it.
Yes, it does.
Help the size. Quite a big table, 6. So I was happy with the size. And it's a chicken and a fly. You know, this one is a drawing. I've been asked to take part in a project with a group of painters, and we're not quite sure who they're all going to be, but I think Peter Doig is one of them. And Hockney is being asked, and he may or may not take part, but the theme was Van Gogh going to work. So we were all asked to work with Van Gogh going to work. So there he is. You won't have seen this, Clarrie. That's Van Gogh going to work. He has a big shadow in the original painting. Francis Bacon did it too, so. And there is the painting that's coming from it, and that is Van Gogh returning from work. So we've got going there and coming back here, and his body has dematerialized into his canvases. You can see his canvases there and there. So, right. And but I've kept the hat. Okay, well those are my. I could go back, but if you've got any more, something you wanted to say.
No, I just wondered, we've got 10 minutes left, so other people have got questions that they want to. If not, there's more.
I just wanted to ask, which gallery was shown this painting before? So which gallery?
The installations. It's at the ones at Tate Britain.
Oh.
So it's part of because of Rose being so important, we've wanted to devote a room to her. For this, we've just rehung all the galleries, and so Rose, there are a few artists who've got their own room, but it's on. So it's just down in Pimlico, and it's on display until the autumn. So there's time to.
It's on display until autumn, so
Yeah. So actually, it's just a short walk away
Okay.
or bus ride.
Yeah, I know what it is. And the drawings are framed. I didn't say it very well. Are they framed?
Are the drawings
No.
framed? No.
There are no drawings in the Tate. But often they're not framed because I'm very happy if they're just stapled to the wall.
Yeah.
Because you can put them in any group you like, any shaped group, and you don't have to frame them, which immediately makes them somehow much more important. They are important, but they're not. They're presented in a very kind of, you know, here they are, look at them, don't look at the frame. And so I have both. Sometimes they're framed and sometimes they're not.
Do you ever work small?
Sorry,
Do you ever work small?
the drawings are small. Paintings aren't. I'm not quite sure why. The watercolours, I do quite a lot of watercolours, and they are that size, or A4. So there are a lot of small works on paper, but there are no small paintings.
And they're not studies, they are standalone watercolours.
They're not studies.
No, they're not studies for bigger things.
No,
they are
no. Well, they can be. Yes, they doesn't matter. They can be. Either. Are you a painter?
I'm a printmaker, but I have worked very large, well not as large as you in life, but 2 metres, you know. But I've just recently done some small, sort of less small than A4, and it's quite fascinating.
Different, yes. Yes. I do A4 and A5 too on paper, but not painting.
Well, I do woodcuts, it just depends on the piece of wood, but I've been using pieces of wood.
Just to ask a quick question about the folds in the work, or the fact that they feel like they're in 2 halves, or you'll see painting
Yes.
above of the painting below. And I'm just
Were you asking why they're in 2?
Yes.
Often, quite simply, because I've stacked them on the floor, the canvases, and they come up together. And also they come up in different orders. So it's a kind of, it's like a flip book. You pick up,
mixed paintings?
you mix them up and you interleave them, and you get odd and particular juxtapositions. And one of them here is, quickly, that one is absolutely, blatantly not connected. They are very different images. With the Posh Spice and the Tate picture, they are connected. Posh Spice goes across 4, the Tate goes 2 and 2. These are stylistically, formally, subject, time, everything about them is unconnected. But all that happened was that they appeared in the newspaper, the same Sunday Observer newspaper, and I had them on the wall. And I painted them side by side, not to connect them, but then I got to like them together. So I thought, I'll hang them together. So it could be a mistake. On the other hand, it could be, I got very fond of them together.
So it reminds me at times of sort of almost like Duchampian divide, where one is in the large glass, where one reading is trying to carry over to the other. And sometimes you'll have figures on the right looking at people.
What, like that?
Yes,
Or like
exactly.
that? Yes, that's chance.
Yeah.
Complete chance. And then the addition of the name at the bottom was to add to it.
Yeah.
And the repeat is because I had 2 for that picture.
Yeah.
I didn't want to waste it, and so I stuck it onto there. But I also put them in display books. I have a lot of drawings in display books which come up book form like that, you know, one. And so that can account for why I put them together.
Just going on that same question, I was interested about the cut or the gap in the Eve painting, and I just wondered about whether or not you could talk a little bit more about. I'm sort of interested in the idea of the gap as in between something that's whole and something that's not yet formed, and I wondered about how do you view this cut or gap, particularly in the Eve painting.
Could you translate? I'm not quite sure of the question. I
I
think
think what you're asking about is, she was interested in the Eve drawing and
Yes.
the sense of the kind of the gaps, or how they
cut.
actually.
The cut.
But that was, as I understand it, practical, wasn't it? And as much as you weren't happy with the
the top of
the
the
top
drawing.
bit.
Okay.
And that, and
Also,
so,
two things,
yeah.
twofold. I wasn't happy with how I'd attached them. It started to bulge, and so I cut it. So two things. It's because the top half of the drawing, the head, wasn't working.
so it's
There was a
pragmatic.
bad head on the body, and kept on being the head was. I didn't want it, so I kept sticking more and more and more on it, and then it got bigger and bigger. As you said, in the Eve painting, the head's very big.
Yeah.
Probably started the size of the original medieval work. Probably started like that, which might have been big, but it got bigger and bigger. So it's part of the process of trying to get it satisfactory, of trying to get it how I want it to be.
Did you?
Yeah, I first came across your work, Rose, about 4 years ago, just down the road here. I guess before I'd seen your work, I share a similar surname to you, so I thought, well, I'll see what this works like. And I was struck very much by the kind of freshness of it all. And then lo and behold, you know, I'm down in Hastings to see what the Joe was like. And then it's there. And, you know, then I'm back and seeing the rehang, and then you're there. I mean, this must be great, you know, you're talking about Cologne now. And how do you feel about that? And why do you think it's something happened like this?
I can't tell you why it happened. I'm very happy about it,
Yeah.
because I had a lot of work done, and it used to pile up in my studio. Now it's all gone into store, and there's a lot that has gone out, and a lot is some into museum pieces. It's very exciting, so I'm very pleased. It's peculiar, it's most surreal, it's odd.
And so just interrupt, I mean,
I can't account for it.
it's also interesting, not just on a big scale. I mean, I live in Bethnal Green. There's some smaller galleries up there, curated by young women particularly, and you're very much very popular with that kind of generation as well. It's
Yes.
quite interesting how you're kind of speaking across various generations.
Well, that is right. I think people who have not met me, they saw the pictures and they thought that I'd just left the art school. I said, well, kind of a bit of a long time ago, yes, but and also a lot of Middle East, I think, Korean, and there's a sympathy, China and Korea. There's something about the painting or the way it's done, or which corresponds. There's empathy, I think. And I'm very happy about that too, because I do like painting, which has had for a long time didn't get the respect that European painting got, and I find that very exciting that group of painters is coming up, and I have a sympathy with the work, or empathy with it, or whatever, you know, a lot. And ancient. So anyway, so good.
Where next?
I have a gallery in Union Gallery. Do you know that in Bethnal Green?
Yes, yeah, of course I was told about that. Yeah, near Keeling House.
Yes, there was a show on. I think it ended yesterday or today. I think it ends today.
Oh no.
Yes,
Still time you can dash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it may have ended. It's scheduled for 26th or something. It may have come down yesterday. I'm not sure. Okay. So,
Is there time for one last question? Anybody?
Rose, I was very interested to hear about when you were saying about some decisions that you made, such as using biro, because that was very different to the formal training, and also on the floor. And what I think is so extraordinary and what people have picked up on is the sort of imaginative freedom in your work.
it does have that.
And I wondered whether that was something that you felt was formed in a similar way in resistance to the way you were describing some of your sort of decision making in terms of process at that early point in
Probably.
your practice, or whether that, and whether that sort of blossomed.
Probably did. It probably did do that. I had a lot of time out with children, and one of my children needed a lot of attention. She was not able to manage by herself, so I had a chunk out and then came back in a very obsessive way, and have been painting ever since. So
It's so wonderful and to hear the way, you're obviously very specific and knowing, obviously, about
Yes.
what you're drawing on, but then there's this incredible sort of freedom and
well, that's very
imaginative
nice, because I gave
approach to delivering
I
that.
gave a lecture to some students, I've done some recently, and the tutor in charge said, well, thank heaven for that, because they are so anxious. Students are so anxious, and they see this and they sort of think, well, why are they so flipping anxious?
Yeah.
So he was happy. He was very, very happy with
and inspirational.
that, that they'd been shown. He thought that was very good for them. Anyway, so that was nice for me as well. I mean, that was right. Well, I'm glad they look free, because they're very, in fact, angst-ridden while they're being done. I can't tell you the mess and the swearing, the mess. It's not happy when it's being done. So I'm very happy. I'm glad it works. I'm glad it works all right in the end. That's good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.